Chapter 66, The Calm Before the Storm. When Wanwan said that she'd go back herself, Han's black hole pupils turned dimmer and the invisible waves beneath his pupils seemed to be gushing out, but in a fleeting moment they were back to normal, as if it was an illusion. Wanwan took his silence as consent, so she walked up to him innocently and gave him a peck on the cheek. Off I go then. I'll say bye to Grandma first. She walked joyfully towards the house. Immediately after Wanwan left, a terrifying chill and rage erupted. The silent and calm little garden quickly transformed into a hell with dark winds blowing and a palpable feeling of murderous intentions. At that moment, Suyi's heart had turned into ashes. He kept praying and praying that Wanwan wouldn't do anything stupid. But then, he witnessed her running wildly on the road to death. This foolish woman still wanted to go to Guyuze. She even thought that master wouldn't find out, treating him like an idiot. Suyi's forehead dripped cold sweat as he stuttered, 9th. Ninth master, should we stop her? Han drew his gaze back from the girl and shut his eyes slowly. The terrifying atmosphere was dispelled the moment his eyes shut. There was a dead silence in the area. Without Han's orders, Su-yi didn't dare make a move. At the same time, in the living room, the old madam was filled with dread when she found out that Wanwan was leaving. She really liked this girl and had seen a great transformation in her grandson these 2 days. Naturally, this made her even more satisfied with Wanwan. Wanwan, I know little Ninth likes to be alone and has a bad temper, but actually, he doesn't want to be this way either. You should also know that little Ninth has trouble sleeping. Think about it, because he gets such little sleep, imagine how horrible he feels. It definitely impacts his temperament as well. But after little Ninth started dating you, I've noticed that his temperament has become gentler. Wanwan, Grandma is truly thankful for you. Thank you for your patience and accommodating little Ninth. In the future, if that brat is ruthless and bullies you, let Grandma know anytime and Grandma will definitely be on your side. Thank you, Grandma. Hearing the old lady pouring her heart out to her, Wanwan felt very emotional. No matter how respectable and honorable this legendary figure was, in this moment she was just an ordinary grandma. It was a pity that the old lady thought that she and Han were a loving couple. Little did she know that her relationship with Han was akin to a bubble easily burst with a single touch. Wanwan insisted that she didn't want to trouble anyone with her departure. In the end, she called herself a car and left. In the old lady's eyes, Wanwan's actions were considerate, but in Su-yi's eyes, it looked like she was shaking them off and eagerly rushing to the hospital to meet Guyuze. In the past, Han would never have allowed her to go back to school by herself. But this time, he completely gave in. But the more lenient Han was, the more Su-yi was afraid. The Han now was like the calm before the storm. If master ordered him to capture her back and tie her up now, that was better than what would happen if he caught her red-handed. This time, I'm afraid Wanwan's done for. To be frank, he had really enjoyed these few peaceful days, but unfortunately, they were merely an illusion. On the other side, Wanwan was already quite a distance away in her car. When they reached a fork in the road, Wanwan suddenly said, "Sir, don't take me to Qinghe High School anymore, head to Ren AI Hospital instead." Chapter 67, Here Comes the Wolf. Hearing Wanwan change the destination all of a sudden, the driver jerked the steering wheel in the opposite direction and headed in the direction of Ren AI Hospital. "Miss, why do you want to go to the hospital suddenly? Are you feeling unwell?" The driver was a little worried, so he asked. "No, it's my boyfriend. He's always having insomnia. I heard that there's a famous senior doctor at Ren AI Hospital and he's really good at treating patients with insomnia, so I'm going there to find out more." "I see, your boyfriend is a lucky man," the driver praised. Wanwan smiled, said nothing and stared out of the window blankly. Shortly after, the car reached the entrance of Ren AI Hospital. Wanwan looked like her original self. She was wearing a pink dress and conspicuously stood there looking very beautiful. The Shinmeng Qi hiding in the dark saw her almost immediately. Seeing how attractive Wanwan was, a shred of jealousy flashed in Shinmeng Qi's eyes. But seeing that she came obediently as expected, her face filled with disdain and mockery. So what if you're pretty, you're so dumb you actually got fooled by me. Shin Mengqi relaxed only when she saw with her own eyes that Wanwan had walked into an AI hospital. She took out her phone and texted Si Han, Mr. C, I was wondering if Wanwan is there with you right now. I was feeling sick earlier so I went to the hospital and I happened to see someone that looked like Wanwan. I'm not sure whether it was her and couldn't get through to her phone either. I'm a little worried, has she fallen ill? She obviously wasn't so dumb as to purposely drive a wedge between them, she just wanted Si Han to find out for himself. Although she didn't want to admit it, Si Han cared deeply for Wanwan and if he knew that Wanwan was ill, he'd definitely come down to the hospital. When that time came, he'd come with a heart full of worries but see Wanwan making out with Gu Yuze tenderly instead. That would be an interesting spectacle for sure. After she sent the text, Shin Mengqi left the hospital with confidence. Wanwan, that idiot, still treating me like her best friend. That idiot will never find out it was me even on her deathbed. On the contrary, Shin Mengqi would never have imagined that from the window of the hospital's second floor, Wanwan had witnessed everything, from her hiding behind the corner and secretly sending a text, to leaving with a delighted expression. Wanwan stood by the window and curled her lips slowly. Of course, she had to make a trip to the hospital and show her face so that Shin Mengqi would play her tricks and continue stirring up trouble between her and Si Han. Everybody knew about the story of the boy who cried wolf. There was nothing to fear the first and second time, but what about the third and fourth time? If Shin Mengqi kept failing in her plans to sow discord between them, even if she told the truth the next time, Si Han would no longer believe her. And that's exactly what she wanted. At this moment, in the little garden at the old house, the moment Wanwan left, Si Han remained rooted at the same spot without moving. That is, until the phone on the table rang, indicating a text message from Shin Mengqi. The ringtone of this text message was like the sound of death in Su Yi's ears. Si Han scanned through the contents of the message, cold and without a trace of warmth. His expression didn't change throughout, it was like that pair of black hole-like eyes had swallowed all his emotions. Su Yi peeked and saw that it was a message from Shin Mengqi. He then looked at Si Han's reaction again and could guess what it was about. The frightening silence lasted for a long time before Si Han picked his phone up and made a call, asking, "Where are you?" Su Yi saw that Si Han had used speed dial and knew that he had called Wanwan. His expression became gray with defeat instantly. This time, no matter if Wanwan was lying or telling the truth, there was no way of coming back from this. Then, he heard Wanwan on the receiver replying, "I had some issues so I went to an AI hospital midway because before she could finish, his cold voice interrupted her, "Go to Jean Garden, now." After finishing the call, Si Han shot Su Yi an icy look, "Go check." Su Yi was stunned and then nodded his head hurriedly. If things have progressed to this stage, Wanwan knows that she can't hide it anymore and has confessed but Master doesn't believe her and wants to continue investigating. Chapter 68, You're Out of Chances. Wanwan was locked up after arriving at Jean Garden. Click, the sound of the lock made her heart jump and she subconsciously tightened her grip around the plastic bag containing the meds she'd obtained from the hospital. Barely 2 weeks had gone by and she was back here again. Even if everything was under control, being trapped in this familiar and luxurious bedroom led to the fear penetrating her soul to annihilate her body rapidly. She had been trapped here for 7 years with an extreme fear of darkness and silence. But eventually, she'd gotten so used to the darkness and dead silence that she started to fear the light and people instead. The scariest thing was not being imprisoned but that even if freedom was given to her one day, she wouldn't be able to escape from the cage around her heart. Even though she was reborn and returned to life before the tragedy began, she still couldn't escape the memories and shadows from her previous life. Outside, the sound of familiar footsteps came closer and closer, step by step. In such a quiet space, it was unusually clear and terrifying. Creak, the door was pushed open. Looking at the terrible and frightening ghostly figures at the door, Wanwan's pupils suddenly contracted. For a moment, the scene in front of her and the memories of her previous life merged completely. The frightened expression of the girl was like a poison that could corrode a person's heart. All of Si Yihan's senses and restraints turned into ashes in a flash. In the next second, Wanwan was thrown onto the bed by an enormous force and the bag that was in her tight grip landed on the floor with a crash. Just as she was about to speak, her throat got choked, it was getting more and more challenging to breathe and life was slowly draining away from her body. When she finally regained her breath, she bit down on her tongue hard and her mouth rapidly filled with the taste of blood. Wanwan, I've said it before. This was the last time. Now, you've run out of chances. Following this, the man's footsteps got further and further away gradually and the sound of the lock clanged again. Once she had been relieved of his presence, Wanwan immediately coughed violently. The fear in her eyes was no longer there, leaving a cold and dim light behind. The study was in total disorder. The big space was frozen, cold and piercing to the bone. The man sat in front of the desk like a weathered sculpture, the violence and sadism eroding the last remnants of humanity on his forehead. In the dead silence, there came a hasty knock on the door suddenly. Get lost, the furious voice stopped the knock on the door. But soon after, the knocks on the door resumed with urgency. As there was no response, the person knocking directly pushed the door open and entered. The situation in the house was more frightening than he'd imagined. At the sight of the monstrous face and scarlet, beast-like eyes, Sui was so scared that he turned pale. However, the issue was so pressing that he had to let the master know. Sui forced himself to stay calm and used all the energy he had to find his voice and said quickly, "Ninth Master, I've checked it myself. Ms. Yi indeed went to the hospital midway and didn't go to school." Clearly sensing the drastic drop in temperature, Sui's body was soaked in sweat, but the surveillance camera shows that Ms. Yi didn't go to the emergency room after reaching the hospital but was at the outpatient department registering to see an old Chinese specialist. As if afraid that Si Yihan hadn't grasped the main point, Sui specifically added, "From beginning to end, Ms. Yi didn't visit Gu Yuze." Chapter 69. It was all a misunderstanding at that point. Sui's expression looked somewhat complexed. That old Chinese doctor is very famous, he's the most skilled at treating insomnia and you consulted him at the beginning as well. I've transferred the surveillance footage of Ms. Ye's visit. Take a look yourself. Sui opened the surveillance footage on his phone. Wanwan was carrying her school bag and sat in front of the old Chinese doctor with a solemn face. "Little miss, where do you feel unwell?" the old Chinese doctor asked. "Doctor, I'm not the one feeling unwell, I'm here on behalf of someone else." Wanwan answered. "You silly little girl, how could you visit a doctor on someone else's behalf?" The old Chinese doctor furrowed his brows. Wanwan hurriedly explained, "Doc, hear me out. My boyfriend has a serious case of insomnia, he's seen many doctors and tried many methods but none have worked. Doctor, you're so famous and he definitely came to seek treatment from you before. I'm just here to find out more about insomnia and understand how he feels." The old Chinese doctor was a little surprised by what she said and also looked somewhat moved. "You, silly little girl, are quite thoughtful. There aren't many patients' families that are as caring as you. All right, I'll tell you." "Thank you, doctor." The girl revealed an extremely joyful smile, pulled out a notebook and pen, and took down notes seriously. Seeing that she was so earnest, the old doctor explained a lot of information in detail. The girl's expression was sincere the whole time and asked very specific questions from time to time. "My grandma told me that long-term insomnia would affect a person's temperament. Is that right?" The old Chinese doctor nodded. "If it's serious, it wouldn't only harm the body but in the long run, it would also greatly impact a person's character and mental health. This is something they're unable to control and as a family member, you should try to be more understanding, caring and patient towards them." I definitely will. I used to aggravate him in the past." The girl looked very guilty. "Previously, to study for my exams, I slept for only 3 to 4 hours a day continuously for a week. That feeling of being sleep-deprived was really horrible. Doctor, tell me more and teach me how to help him so that he'll feel better." The 10-minute-long footage ended and the room resumed its deathly stillness. The girl's caring words, however, seemed to ring in his ears. Suyi's heart was full of mixed feelings. He couldn't express how he felt. Ninth Master, we seem to have misunderstood Ms. Yi. This deathly stillness went on for an indefinite amount of time when suddenly, an ear-piercing screech of a chair rubbing against the floor resounded. When Su Yi regained his senses, the man in front of the desk was already gone. Bedroom on the second floor. Bang, the door was forcefully pushed open by someone. The dusky room was cold and quiet. The girl had remained in the same position he'd left her in before. She had her body curled in fetal position and hadn't moved at all. When she heard the door open, her petite frame started shaking violently. Han stood at the same spot, fingers in a tight fist, feet rooted to the ground. His gaze slowly landed on the black plastic bag at the side of the bed and the contents of the bag sprawled all over the floor. He slowly walked towards the bag, bent over and picked everything up. A few parcels of Chinese herbal medicine, an outpatient record sheet, a pink notebook. Sprawled across the page were the girl's crammed handwritten notes. Chapter 70. How could she not be disgusted? Han looked at the things on the floor, at the notebook, at the girl's carefully written notes with such careful strokes, and it was as if someone had stabbed his chest. After packing up the items on the ground carefully, the man stood up and walked towards the girl stiffly. At this moment, the girl was hugging her knees and her head was buried deep. Her cautious and repulsed position isolated herself in her own small world. On the side of her curved neck, there were visible bruises, a ghastly sight. Han reached out his hand like he wanted to touch the girl's shoulders. However, as he moved slightly closer, the girl's body started trembling even more. The man pressed his thin lips together, his outstretched hand in midair. After a long while, he decided to retract his hand and slowly took a step back. His eyes didn't leave the girl's body and images in his head kept flashing by. She had told him that she'd thought things through and wanted to try to date him normally. She said she'd work hard to become a sweet melon. She was willing to meet Grandma, dressed up demurely on purpose, picked gifts seriously and made the old lady so happy. She knew that he had insomnia, probably asked Grandma about it, then specifically went to the hospital to speak to a specialist and found an experienced old doctor to explain his illness, made notes, bought medication. But in the end, what did she get? It was his violent rage without rhyme or reason, unreasonable tongue-lashing, and indiscriminate hurt. She was afraid of him, disgusted with him. How could she not be afraid? How could she not be disgusted? The man's gaze was pitch black, the chill from his body terrifying, the whole place filled with a suffocating oppression. The girl curled up on the bed noticed the terrifying surroundings and lifted the little head that was buried between her knees while her whole body trembled. The pair of eyes that looked at him were full of fear and helplessness. She murmured, "Sorry. Sorry. I was wrong. I've learned my lesson. I've learned from it." Looking at the girl's alarmed and panicky expression and hearing the girl admitting her mistake, Han's expression darkened even more. It was like a giant metal clasp was gripping his heart tightly. After some time, the man clenched his fist and walked to the girl again. Under the extremely fearful gaze of the girl, he carefully and slowly embraced her in his arms. The girl seemed to come to her senses. She sobbed too much to even speak properly. "I didn't lie to you, didn't betray you. I went to find a doctor." "You couldn't sleep." Han hugged the girl tighter, The moment he spoke that single word, the tears which the girl had been holding back for so long rolled down in big, hot droplets, soaking his chest. Chapter 71. At least comfort her a little, probably because she'd kept it in for so long. The built-up negative feelings from her previous and current life exploded at that moment. Wan Wan's tears couldn't stop flowing, and even after crying for more than half an hour, there were no signs of stopping. Han embraced the girl from start till end without speaking a single word or movement. Su-yi chased after Han after noticing he was gone and stood by the door at this moment. Watching how badly Wanwan was crying, he felt a bit guilty as well. They'd really misunderstood her this time, after all. It went without explanation that she must have been frightened by the master just now. She did everything out of goodwill and yet, was misunderstood. How could she not be sad? The good thing was that the truth was sorted out. But master, she's crying so badly, shouldn't you at least comfort her a little? Just standing there like an ice sculpture is scary, alright? For his master, he'd probably reached his limit already. He couldn't really imagine his master comforting the girl. An indefinite amount of time had passed before the man finally loosened his embrace of the girl. His face regained a cold expression and he said in a calm manner, "Su-yi, take her back to school." After speaking, he turned and left without a second glance. After Su-yi heard that, he was initially stunned and looked at the back of his master leaving and somehow felt that he looked a bit grim. Su-yi sighed softly, looked at the girl on the bed who was still sobbing and tried his best to speak softly, "Ms. Yi, don't cry anymore, don't worry. The misunderstanding has been cleared and master won't bother you. See, he allowed me to take you back to school." After half an hour, Wanwan reached the school gate. "Ms. Yi, we're here." Su-yi stopped the car and went to the back to help her with the door. Wanwan carried her school bag and got off, looking stone-faced. Her little face was still tear-stained. Su-yi looked at the girl in front of him, opening his mouth as if to say something but ended up keeping silent. As the black car slowly left her sight and disappeared into the night, Wanwan's empty and numb eyes regained focus. She stood rooted at the same spot for quite some time before slowly walking towards the school. She didn't return to the dormitory immediately but sat on a long bench by the school's little lake. The cool night wind cut across the surface of the lake and blew against her face, reviving her senses. Not long ago, her past had almost been replayed out but now, she regained her freedom once again. At first, she merely wanted to beat him at his own game. However, even if everything went according to plan, the fear of Siyi-han was real and so was the pain she felt previously. Not only this time but the accumulated pain and resentment from both lives. After this episode, she was all burnt out but after venting, she also felt much better. Fortunately, it was ultimately a near miss and she successfully changed her original course of life, making it through the crisis this time. Chapter 72, His True Face, Revealed. Wanwan wasn't sleepy so she sat by the lake and pondered about things. As she was lost in thought, a pair of messy footsteps came up behind her. A person walked over grumbling and swearing then sat down on the bench diagonally behind her. "Damn you, Zhao Xingzhou. You beast. I'm going to the Education Bureau to report you for abusing a student." Psycho. The little lake was very silent at night so Wanwan heard all of the boys' curses. Hearing this voice and these curses, the person speaking seemed to be the Ling Dong who planted the water bucket on the classroom door to prank her, the godbrother of Qing Shui. Seems like he was being tortured by Zhao Xingzhou. Zhao Xingzhou really didn't disappoint, he didn't let him off even on the weekend. Wanwan was sitting under the shade of a big tree so Ling Dong couldn't see her at all. However, Wanwan could see Ling Dong's withered face very clearly under the moonlight. He had two huge dark eye circles, a can of beer in his hand and a messy stack of math exam papers that he was stepping on, leaving black footprints all over them. Wanwan, the ugly freak. She's made me so miserable. Just wait and see. If I don't kill you, my last name isn't Ling. Ling Dong crushed the can of beer, his forehead full of gloom. Hearing her own name, the corners of Wanwan's mouth twitched. How is this my problem? Just because they wanted to prank me, I had to go along with it obediently. This Ling Dong was the school's little bully, renowned for being overbearing and unreasonable. As his father was the school's director, those bullied by him could only swallow their hurt and even the teachers turned a blind eye and didn't dare to discipline him. It was just his luck to bump into a stubborn teacher like Zhao Xingzhou this time. If it had been anybody else, he'd be let off with just a scolding. If she was targeted by Zhao Xingzhou, her days in school wouldn't be easy. "Oh, Ugly freak, you dared to trick even me. You want to play games with me? I'll face you to the death, let's see if you'll still be so arrogant then. Ling Dong kept calling her an ugly freak and continued his drunken ramblings. When she heard the end of it, Wan Wan couldn't hold it in any longer, so she coughed lightly and said, Ling Dong, you seem to have set your own trap and gotten trampled by Zhao Xingzhou. How is it my fault at all? At hearing this voice beside him without warning, Ling Dong was so frightened that he fell off the bench. It took him a long time before he climbed back up. With a shaking voice, he said, Damn. Are you a human or a ghost? Wan Wan was a bit speechless. Just act as if you saw a ghost. You're Wan Wan. Ling Dong couldn't see the person opposite clearly, but as he recognized her voice, his expression turned ugly. Not wondering why was Wan Wan out so late, the boy immediately spoke with a sullen tone, Ugly freak. How dare you speak? If it wasn't for you taking your time to get into the classroom the other day, I wouldn't be this miserable. I'm telling you, you're dead. As long as I'm in Qinghe, don't hope of ever having a good day. I'll give you a taste of death. Wan Wan rubbed her forehead. Forget it, there was no reasoning with these kids. Watching Wan Wan stand up to leave, Ling Dong wasn't satisfied. He picked up the can of beer, staggered to catch up and grabbed Wan Wan's arm. Ugly freak, I didn't say you could leave. Stay right. Before he could finish, Ling Dong opened his eyes wide suddenly and stared at that unbelievably beautiful little face under the moonlight, immediately dumbstruck. Chapter 73, Love at First Sight. In front of him was a girl in a pink dress with long black hair and skin as fair as snow. Looking at those eyes, brighter than the stars in the sky, brimming with reflections of light from the water. She looked as if she'd just cried, tugging on his heartstrings. If the school beauty, Qing Shui, was beautiful, then the girl in front of him was like a fallen angel. Ling Dong felt as if his own heart had been hit strongly. His heartbeat echoed continuously in his head, muddling his whole sense of being. Wan Wan was used to seeing this stunned expression of his whenever he bumps into her, but there was something different about Ling Dong's expression this time. Ling Dong was very shocked, like he'd just seen a ghost, but then, he started blushing, his gaze becoming strange, and finally, he released her like he'd been electrocuted. He seemed shy and nervous as he stared at her and stuttered, You're Wan Wan. Wan Wan raised her brows slightly and touched her own face subconsciously, as she recalled that she'd left the old house directly and was dressed well but didn't have any makeup on. She'd definitely give her classmates a scare without any makeup on. Since he'd already seen her, she couldn't deny it. She smiled and said, I didn't put on any makeup today, sorry to scare you. She turned and walked away casually after speaking. Until Wan Wan had left, Ling Dong was still rooted in the same spot as if he was dreaming. What's happening? That girl prettier than Qing Shui. Was Wan Wan the ugly freak? How could that be? Ling Dong hobbled back to the hostel like he was in a fantasy. Upon seeing Ling Dong, 3 other boys from the hostel immediately greeted him. One of them with cropped hair presented one of his precious cigarettes amiably. Dong, you're back. Watching Ling Dong walking straight to his bunk and sitting down without any reaction, the guy with cropped hair stared. Dong, are you all right? Is something wrong? The guy on the upper bunk of Ling Dong's bed looked at Ling Dong spaced out and was worried as well. Dong, don't scare us. A topless boy in oversized pants spat and said angrily, Damn, that Zhao Xingzhou is a monster. For just pouring a bucket of water on him, does he have to torture you like that? Look at what he's done to our Dong. It was all that ugly freak Wan Wan's fault. Don't be pissed, Dong. We'll teach that brat a lesson tomorrow. We'll help you and Qing Shui get your revenge. The 3 of them talked busily about vengeance but gradually felt something was fishy with Ling Dong's dazed expression. His whole face was blushing red, from the tips of his ears to his neck, and he kept muttering things like, Impossible, how could she be so beautiful, and, she was simply a goddess. The 3 guys looked at each other. Ling Dong didn't look like he had been tortured by Zhao Xingzhou to the point of being in a trance. Instead, he seemed somewhat like a teenage boy in love. Up until that moment, Ling Dong hadn't heard his roommates, nor had he noticed they were staring at him muttering everything about the face that made his heart beat wildly. In a daze, he suddenly felt something in his palm. He slowly opened to look and it looked like a small, pink, knitted flower that he'd pulled from Wanwan's clothing by accident. Looking at that little flower, Ling Dong was suddenly wide awake. It wasn't a dream. It's real, that girl really was Wanwan. Wanwan's bare face wasn't only ugly, but instead, she was so beautiful. Nothing makes sense. Chapter 74. A hero to the rescue. Wanwan headed back to her dorm right away and didn't think too much about the episode by the lake. There were only a few months left before the college entrance exam, so she wouldn't be in school for much longer. There was no need to waste her time on these childish games. The next morning, Wanwan reverted back to her outrageous get-up and went to class as usual. Just as she stepped inside, the chaotic classroom became silent in an instant. The students in class stared at her with gleaming eyes and a hopeful expression. Wanwan was a little annoyed. These people made it so obvious. Were they really going to treat her like a fool who didn't know any better? Alright, with her previous intellect, she really wouldn't have known any better. Wanwan acted blissfully unaware and walked straight to her seat. With a glance, she realized that there was something not right about her chair. It was covered with a thick layer of colorless glue. If she hadn't looked closely, she wouldn't have seen it and would have sat right on it. With this type of strong glue, a person stuck to the chair would have to remove their pants to get up. Although it wouldn't cause any substantial damage, she'd be embarrassed in front of all her classmates. Wanwan looked at the Xia who was sprawled on the table napping as usual and silently muttered fatale. Just as she pulled out the chair, somebody suddenly rushed up to her side, pushed her aside and then quickly pulled out her chair. The chair was dragged to the front, the sunlight illuminating it clearly so everybody could see the layer of glue on the chair clearly. The Xia that was asleep was woken up by the piercing screech. His irritated gaze swept across Wanwan and Ling Dong, standing in front, and then glanced at the chair. He furrowed his brows. Wanwan didn't notice Xia's reaction. Her brows were raised and she was looking at Ling Dong who'd suddenly appeared. What's the meaning of this? Being stared at by those black pupils, Ling Dong's originally arrogant and defiant expression suddenly froze up. He pulled her chair to his own seat and exchanged it for Wanwan's without saying a word. That wasn't all. Under the stares of all his astonished classmates, Ling Dong reached his arm out again and removed a dead rat from Wanwan's desk drawer. After seeing the dead rat, some timid girls shrieked in disgust. Ling Dong threw the dead rat away expressionlessly, and then shone a light from his phone into the drawer to check that there was nothing else inside before telling Wanwan in a low and muffled voice, "Take a seat." He didn't dare to look into Wanwan's eyes after speaking. He went back to his seat, took off his jacket, covered the glue and then simply sat on it. Wanwan, aside from Wanwan, the whole classroom was in total silence as everybody was confused by Ling Dong's actions. Such absurdity so early in the morning. What's the meaning of this? Why would Ling Dong help Wanwan? Especially Ching Shui, whose elegant and pretty face was enraged, stared at Ling Dong in disbelief, not believing what she had just seen. Damn! Dong, what's going on? I thought we said that we'd teach that ugly freak a lesson today. Ling Dong's deskmate, the cropped hair guy asked. Ling Dong's looked slightly annoyed. Shut up. Does it look like I have to explain my actions to you? Oh, his deskmate shut his mouth immediately. Chapter 75, One of my people, damn. What's going on? I thought there'd be a good show today. Why would Ling Dong help Wanwan? Who knows? It's totally crazy. Maybe he was put in place by Zhao Xingzhou's torture. How could Ling Dong, this little lord, have any fear? It's good enough if he doesn't make things worse. In the midst of all the discussion, Wanwan sat down on Ling Dong's chair. She had been prepared for trouble, but what happened was beyond her expectations. Had Ling Dong really been put in his place by Zhao Xingzhou's torture? Or... Wanwan vaguely recalled that Ling Dong accidentally saw how she looked without her makeup last night. His actions couldn't be related to that, right? Shortly, the bell indicating the start of lessons rang and the classroom quieted down again. Wanwan didn't give it any further thought. She looked at the phone in her drawer, unfocused. From last night till now, Han hadn't contacted her after he sent Su Yi to take her back to school. According to his reaction yesterday, he shouldn't be angry anymore, right? Actually, she did take a risk yesterday after all. If Han had completely lost his senses in his fury and locked her up without letting her explain, the consequences would have been dire. Fortunately, her efforts so far hadn't been wasted. Han hadn't completely believed Shen Mengqi's words and went to investigate things himself. After class, the students continued to stare in the direction of Wanwan and whispered, after holding things in for an entire lesson. Watching Cheng Shui and 3 of her diehard followers walking up to Wanwan aggressively, everybody was alert again. "Ugly freak, come out. We have something for you." One of the girls with a sharp chin barked harshly. Usually, people called out after class would be brought to the girls' washroom to be bullied. Even though Wanwan didn't want to entertain these childish fights, being bothered all the time affected her mood too. She shot them a cold glare and replied leisurely, "Sure. What are you waiting for, hurry up." The girl couldn't wait and started to drag her as another girl next to her started pulling her as well. Xia, who was lying on the table asleep, looked up and his brows twitched when he saw the scene before him. Just as he was about to speak, a dark and cold voice sounded from behind him, "Who said you guys could touch her?" Ling Dong stood at the classroom door with a big plastic bag in his hand, his expression terrifying. Although Ling Dong didn't look as handsome as Xia, he was good-looking in his own way. It was just that his temperament was completely different from Xia's. He was like a rebellious wolf, violence buzzing throughout his body, and was unusually vicious when he fought. People feared him when they saw him every day. His current expression made everybody quiver to the bone. Seeing that Ling Dong was standing behind them with that face, the 3 girls were startled by his scary expression. "Dong, brother Dong." One of the girls summoned the courage to explain, "Dong, this ugly freak was too hateful. Not only did she snatch up Cheng Shui's role, she also made you suffer so much. We merely wanted to teach her a lesson to avenge you." Ling Dong's gaze swept across the 3 girls and everybody in the classroom. Making sure to enunciate every syllable, he said, "Since none of you understood me just now, let me say it again. From now on, Wanwan is one of my people. Whoever touches her again is going against me, Ling Dong." Chapter 76, Not a Fight, but a Date. The 3 girls, all the students in class, Wanwan herself was dumbfounded. The 3 girls looked at each other and took a long while to regain their senses. Then they hurriedly pressed on, "Dong. Brother Dong. What are you saying? What do you mean Wanwan is one of your people? Dong, did you make a mistake somewhere?" Ling Dong's face was filled with annoyance. "I meant what I said, literally. Wanwan is one of my people, nobody is allowed to touch her. Don't you understand English? If you understand, then get lost already." The 3 of them were Cheng Shui's diehard followers and were, at the same time, close to Ling Dong. This was the first time Ling Dong had used such a harsh tone with them, and their eyes turned red after being yelled at. At first, they wanted to protest more, but after seeing Ling Dong's terrifying expression, they didn't dare and could only stomp their feet and rush to Cheng Shui. After the 3 of them left, Ling Dong looked at Wanwan again and his initial ferocious expression became stiff and raw. After hesitating for a few moments, Ling Dong turned, shoved the big bag of snacks he was holding into Wanwan's arms and said in a low voice, "For you." Wanwan looked at the snacks, her expression confused as she continued in silence. Ling Dong stood in front of her desk without indicating any intentions of leaving. He looked hesitant to speak, and each time he opened his mouth to say something, he'd swallow his words. This went on a few times before he finally took a deep breath and stuttered, Wanwan. Are you free tonight after school? Tonight? A phrase subconsciously appeared in Wanwan's head, a phrase people usually said whenever they wanted a fight, don't leave after school. Is he preparing to teach me a lesson himself after school? Ling Dong must have felt that Wanwan misunderstood, so he quickly added, There's a newly opened barbecue shop near school. Do you want to go together? My treat. All the students crowded around. Damn. Why is this turning more and more bizarre? Wanwan furrowed her brows with all her strength. What's going on? It's not a fight but a date. Wait. Sorry, Ling Dong, I don't understand at all. What kind of trick is this? Wanwan was straight to the point. Actually, everybody crowding around didn't understand either. It was understandable if Ling Dong didn't dare to touch Wanwan because of Zhao Xingzhou, but even so, he didn't have to go so far as to say things like Wanwan was one of his people, right? And now, he's even asking her out for dinner tonight? What exactly happened in those short 2 days off from school? Hearing Wanwan's words, Ling Dong's face turned ugly as he said unhappily, It's not a trick. Wanwan smiled, Ling Dong, straightforward people don't resort to insinuations. What on earth are you thinking? Just come out with it. Ling Dong stood and stared at her, his knuckles clenched so tightly that they started cracking. Just as Wanwan thought that he was going to hit her, she heard him suddenly say, Wanwan, I like you. Wanwan was stunned, huh? Puff. Cough. Si Xia, who was watching nonchalantly at the side, couldn't hold back anymore. He choked and started coughing violently. All the students in the classroom gasped and everyone looked like they had just seen a ghost. Damn! What did I just hear? Dong actually confessed to that ugly freak, Wanwan. Ling Dong's friend's jaw nearly fell off. Another guy's face was filled with shock. Dong, are you crazy? Chapter 77, Boyfriend Material. Wanwan was caught off guard as she was confessed to in front of everybody. At that moment, her heart was in despair. She just kept thinking that it's all over. She'd recently escaped death and gone through a disaster. Who knew that right after, Ling Dong would cause more trouble? Where had it all gone wrong? Could it be that to take revenge on me, Ling Dong plans to dump me after winning me over? Wanwan quickly disregarded this possibility, since this would involve too much sacrifice on the part of the enemy himself. As long as Ling Dong wasn't out of his mind, he'd never use this kind of sacrificial method to take revenge. This couldn't really be because of last night, could it? If this wasn't a trick, this could be the only reason. He'd only seen her without makeup, and besides, it was a quick glance. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, and also thought that since Ling Dong was tipsy, he might not have seen her clearly. Who knew that just a glance would land her in such a big trouble? This devilish, superficial world. Ling Dong was quite popular in school, and news of this big shot confessing his love for Ching He's infamous ugly girl would definitely spread through the school within half a day. It'd only be a matter of time before Si Yihan found out too. With Si Yihan's temperament, just this incident alone could cause all her efforts to go down the drain. Wanwan thought she'd have at least a few days of peace. Her heart was so tired that she didn't want to speak. Ling Dong, I think you need to see an eye doctor. Wanwan rested her hand on forehead and spoke feebly. What Wanwan had said echoed everyone's thoughts. Everybody nodded. Ling Dong's diehard followers even silently added, not just the eye doctor but a psychologist as well. Ling Dong wrinkled his brows and stared at the girl. He enunciated every single word he said clearly, Wanwan, I'm serious. Wanwan naturally wanted to reject, she couldn't let anybody get a hold over her. But she couldn't possibly talk about her boyfriend in front of everyone. If the school found out about her puppy love, that would be a violation of school rules and she'd be penalized again. She didn't have a school director as her father like Ling Dong, so she couldn't act impulsively. Thus, Wanwan could only say, "Sorry, whether this is a trick or for real, I have no interest in you." Ling Dong stiffened up. Why? Why aren't you interested in me? Wanwan saw that Ling Dong was standing there stubbornly, his expression unusually serious and looking like he wouldn't give up without an answer. She could only reply, "Because you aren't boyfriend material." "What are your standards? How am I lacking? Tell me, I can change." Ling Dong said immediately. Damn. Is Dong under a curse? This is definitely not Dong, he must be possessed. Damn, what did this ugly freak do to Dong? Everyone thought at first that Ling Dong would definitely be enraged after Wanwan's rejection. Who knew that he'd so submissive and even offer to change for her? Ling Dong's diehard followers were completely confused, in addition to the students gathered around them. Everyone felt that their senses had been assaulted by an atomic bomb. Wanwan sighed, "Ling Dong, don't blame me, this was what you asked for." Thus, Wanwan replied, "My first standard is be at least 1800 times better looking than Si Xia." Ling Dong was stunned for a long while before regaining his senses. Are you kidding? Si Xia, who'd been dragged into this for no reason at all, Wanwan's face was grave. I'm serious. Chapter 78, More like he's blind. By the end of the day, this explosive news had spread throughout Qinghe and even other high schools in the area. Everybody knew about the big shot of Qinghe, Ling Dong, being rejected by the ugliest girl, Wanwan. They also knew about that crazy ugly girl shooting her mouth off that her standards for boyfriends were to be better looking than Si Xia. The school's hall, Ling Dong sat far away at the last row, watching devoutly as Wanwan rehearsed at the front. Even after being rejected by Wanwan on the spot, he still refused to give up. On the window seat next to him was Si Xia. Ling Dong passed a cigarette over. Si Xia looked down lazily and refused it. Seeing that he didn't take it, Ling Dong lit the cigarette himself and took a long drag. Then, he said sternly, "Si Xia, Wanwan is the girl I'm after. If we're brothers, then don't go overboard with the kissing scene. You gotta pretend." Si Xia's indifferent expression seemed to crack for a moment. "You're overthinking it." Ling Dong also felt that he was overthinking it, since Si Xia couldn't even get close to Wanwan's face. So, Wanwan's current getup was extremely safe. So, Ling Dong lightly coughed, "Si Xia, why don't we strike a deal? Give this role to me, alright? I'll sort this out with the teacher. Since little Shui doesn't want you to be intimate with Wanwan, then both of you shouldn't act. I'll cover for you instead. Isn't this the best of both worlds?" After hearing this, Si Xia opened his eyes widely and looked at him, seemingly considering his offer. Ling Dong's best friends couldn't tolerate it anymore and they rushed to Ling Dong with frightened expressions. "Dong. Calm down, Dong. Why are you so pessimistic?" Another guy's face was also bitter. "Dong, what happened? When did your taste become so particular?" While the two brothers were fussing, Ling Dong recalled yesterday evening's fleeting glimpse and his ears immediately turned red. Initially, he wanted to defend himself, but finally, he only scolded them gruffly. "What do you guys know?" He'd never tell anybody the truth. He liked the feeling of being the only one who knew her secret. Anyway, if everybody knew, he'd have a lot more rivals. "Dong!" Cheng Shui quickly walked to Ling Dong, so angry that her beautiful little face looked distorted. "Dong, what exactly are you doing? Don't tell me that you really fell in love with that ugly freak, Wanwan." She wouldn't tolerate it even if Ling Dong took Si Xia's place. How could Ling Dong be together with that ugly freak Wanwan? Ling Dong looked at the raging Cheng Shui. "Yeah, I really fell for her." Cheng Shui choked. "Are you crazy? You could fall for anyone, but you fell for her. Do you know what everyone is saying about you? They're saying that your brain is fried." "Then my brain is fried." Ling Dong blew out smoke with a smug expression. Huh? Is his brain fried? More like he's blind. Si Xia, what do you think? Ling Dong looked at Si Xia again and asked nervously. At this moment, someone in front yelled, Si Xia, it's your turn. Si Xia's back stiffened and he looked at Wan Wan's bloody red lips like she'd just swallowed a child. After a long while, he said, I'll consider it. He glanced at the time on his watch and hurriedly said, I've got to go. Chapter 79, Do I Look Single? As Si Xia had to run at the last minute, the final act couldn't be rehearsed and so, everybody left. He must have scared Si Xia so he ran off to hide. Speaking of which, Si Xia wouldn't really give the role of the prince to Ling Dong, would he? I think it's possible. If someone was a sucker and volunteered to cover for him, it wouldn't make sense not to take the opportunity. I couldn't tell that the ugly freak, Wanwan, had such cunning. What magic potion did she give Ling Dong? In the small hall, the girls were still secretly discussing amongst themselves, but once Ling Dong shot a sinister glare across at them, they all turned pale instantly and quickly packed up to leave. After glaring at those people, Ling Dong walked to Wanwan. His ferocious expression immediately became stiff and uncertain. It's fine if you don't want to have dinner with me, I'll walk you back to your dormitory. Wanwan furrowed her brows. Ling Dong, I've told you before. Ling Dong immediately interrupted her. I know I'm not good looking enough, but I'll treat you really well. You can't just go by my looks. Hearing that, the corners of Wanwan's mouth twitched. Doesn't he see the irony in saying this? You have feelings for me all of a sudden because you saw how I looked without makeup last night, right? Wanwan asked bluntly. Ling Dong didn't deny it and nodded, yup. Wanwan raised her brows, so you like me just for my looks? Ling Dong pursed his lips, I admit that I really like your face, You're really beautiful. And a beautiful girl is a man's desire. I don't think there's anything wrong with liking you because of the way you look. Wanwan was slightly dumbfounded by Ling Dong's confidence and courage and she could only reply, actually, I have a boyfriend already. What did you say? Upon hearing that, Ling Dong's expression changed. After a long time, he calmed down, you don't have to be like this. Wanwan was helpless, do I look single? Ling Dong frowned, that's not what I meant, she couldn't blame him for not believing her. After all, Wanwan had always worn such terrifying makeup, how could she possibly have a boyfriend? Your boyfriend fulfills your requirement? Ling Dong asked. Wanwan nodded her head with certainty, yes. But after Wanwan said that, Ling Dong's face instantly turned black and was even more convinced that she was lying. Wanwan, you don't have to find any more excuses to lie to me, you have the right to reject me and I have the right to chase you. I won't give up. Wanwan sighed, then what should I do to make you believe I told the truth? Why does everybody doubt that I have a boyfriend? They're all too judgmental with appearances. Don't they understand that someone with exotic taste could actually like a girl like me? Ling Dong looked at Wanwan and gave it some thought before replying, unless I see him with my own eyes. See him with your own eyes? Bringing Si Han to meet a boy who likes me and is currently wooing me, do I want to die? Well, no. It's not impossible to get a substitute boyfriend to meet Ling Dong. Wanwan seriously hesitated for a long time before finally looking at Ling Dong and asked tentatively, you're sure that you'll give up after seeing him? Ling Dong didn't fall into her trap and replied cautiously, of course, if he's really outstanding like you said, 1,800 times better looking than Si Xia. Alright, it looks like randomly dragging a person to cover up for me is impossible. Where can I find a guy 1,800 times better looking than Si Xia? Fine, let me think about it, my boyfriend is pretty busy. I'll let you know when I've made an appointment, Wanwan replied. Ling Dong went along with it without a worry, sure. Chapter 80, Ruining the picturesque view, Ling Dong insisted on personally escorting Wanwan back to the dormitory, and you could imagine what the walk back was like. Onlookers could only see a tall and handsome boy in a basketball outfit, following in the footsteps of a girl next to him like a guardian angel, completely winning over any teenage girl's heart. However, the girl whom he was escorting ruined the picturesque view completely with her scary, explosive hair, thick smoky makeup and bright red bloody lips. It was an awful sight to behold. Oh my god! That ugly freak, Wanwan, actually has a suitor. Not to mention that her suitor is actually the big boss of Qinghe. I thought that was just a rumor. This is unbelievable. Amongst the crowd of onlookers, Shen Mengqi looked at both of them from afar. Seeing the way Qinghe's big shot was so attentive to Wanwan, her face stiffened for a moment. She thought that she'd see Wanwan looking devastated today, but who knew that she'd be totally fine, making such a big splash at school. At the entrance of the girls' dormitory, after Ling Dong left, Shen Mengqi hurriedly ran towards Wanwan and looked in the direction of Ling Dong's retreating back. She asked hesitantly with concern, Wanwan, what's going on between you and Ling Dong? At that moment, Shen Mengqi had two girls behind her. The girl on the left was in a white Chanel ladylike skirt and stood there proudly, looking disapprovingly at Wanwan. She said with condescension, on one hand you're getting ideas about Si Xia and on the other, you're hooking up with Ling Dong. You seriously have no shame. Hearing what Jiang Yanran said, Shen Mengqi felt pleased. She hid away her joyful expression and warned Jiang Yanran affectionately, Yanran, don't say that about Wanwan, she isn't that sort of person. They're probably just ordinary friends. Jiang Yanran's delicate little face was scornful and full of disdain. How can they be ordinary friends? He's already confessed in public and even acted as her guardian angel. How is this normal for ordinary friends? The average-looking girl in her school uniform on the right side of Shen Mengqi said sarcastically, how does this ugly freak even hook up with a man when she looks so hideous? How does she do it? The commotion with Shen Mengqi's group caused quite a few girls to crowd around to join in on the criticism. After hearing what Fang Qin said, the crowd of onlookers looked at each other and speculated, Tisk, could it be her skills in bed? Shen Mengqi protected her anxiously, there must be a misunderstanding. Jiang Yanran folded her arms, seeing that Shen Mengqi spoke up for Wanwan and scowled, Mengqi, why are you still hanging out with this kind of person? Don't you find her gross? Shen Mengqi gloated beneath her eyes, but on the surface, she acted like she was in a difficult position, being sandwiched between Wanwan and Jiang Yanran. Yanran, don't say that, Wanwan is actually quite pitiful. With her family the way it is, I can't possibly leave her when she's at rock bottom. Jiang Yanran sneered, Mengqi, you're too kind and too soft-hearted. As the saying goes, that miserable man must have some flaw causing all the misery. Her family is a wreck because of her father's wickedness, her own corrupted behavior, and her complicated personal life. Is this kind of person worthy of your sympathy? She's so cunning, sitting next to Si Xia even after cheating on the exam and bumping Cheng Shui out of her rightful place in the show. She's even capable of hooking up with the boss of Qinghe. All the other girls crowded around nodded in agreement and condemned her. Chapter 81, Shouldn't You Know Best? Wanwan watched coldly as Shen Mengqi used Jiang Yanran and Fang Qin as ammo and continuously fired shots at her. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. This was familiar to her. It was just like this in her previous life as well. Shen Mengqi hid at the back and pretended to be the good guy each time while Jiang Yanran and Fang Qin stepped forward in her place to fight. Previously, she'd shared a dorm with Shen Mengqi, Jiang Yanran, and Fang Qin. Her relationship with Jiang Yanran wasn't so bad at the beginning while Fang Qin was a complete pushover, she didn't dare to offend anybody. So, she didn't know Jiang Yanran and Fang Qin slowly started to exclude her and requested the school for a change of dorms. It was a long time before she found out that there were rumors that she was always being picked up in luxurious cars and had intimate relationships with people outside school because of her sugar daddy. As the rumors about her spread, nobody wanted to live with her and so, she was switched to a room by herself. It was easy to guess where all these rumors came from and why Jiang Yanran and Fang Qin believed them. Wanwan smiled faintly and glanced at Shenmengqi. You still want to pretend to be innocent? I want to see how Jiang Yanran and Fang Qin react after seeing the true face of this, kind and innocent, girl. Shenmengqi was good at manipulating people's hearts. Her two-faced tactics managed to create quite a few connections for her and she stepped on all these people, one by one, to climb higher and higher. Of course, she wasn't the only one. Jiang Yanran was one of them as well. Her father was a veteran in the entertainment circle and the Jiang Yanran of the future was an internationally known director. The film which led Shenmengqi to stardom was directed by her. However, this talented director's fate was tragic in the end. During the peak of her career, she committed suicide by slitting her wrist and died in the bathtub at home. As for her cause of death, there were many speculations. The reported cause was depression, but the truth was that her husband Song Zihang had cheated on her and the mistress was her good friend, the lead actress whom she had groomed herself, Shenmengqi. Jiang Yanran and Song Zihang grew up together. Jiang Yanran had always loved Song Zihang deeply but Song Zihang only loved her like a sibling and married her because of the pressure from his parents. Jiang Yanran only found out on her deathbed that the person who'd captured Song Zihang's heart was actually the person she was closest to and trusted the most. At this time 7 years ago, Jiang Yanran wasn't dating Song Zihang yet but Song Zihang and Shenmengqi were already fooling around way before that. Like the way she used to tackle her brother, Shenmengqi's way of dealing with men was to not accept but also not to reject. She'd keep them hanging, waiting for their anticipation to spike and reaping the biggest gains. She also especially enjoyed the thrill of stealing men away from others. As all of these thoughts swirled around in her head, Wanwan replied nonchalantly, Meng Qi, shouldn't you know best about what's going on between me and Ling Dong? Me? I've only just found out. Shenmengqi's face was filled with confusion. She wasn't sure why but Wanwan's expression made her feel a little uneasy. Wanwan replied with certainty, I told you before that I overheard Ling Dong losing a bet to some of his friends so he had to court me. At first, I thought they were joking, I didn't think that Ling Dong would really court me. Don't you remember? Hearing what Wanwan said about Ling Dong courting her due to a lost bet, the onlookers suddenly understood. If that's the case, everything makes sense. When did you say that? Shenmengqi furrowed her brows. Chapter 82, She Reveals Her True Nature. Just as Shenmengqi was about to deny what Wanwan had said, Wanwan glanced at Jiang Yanran inadvertently then gave a thoughtful expression and reminded Shenmengqi, it was the end of last month. Weren't you with Song Zihang at the amusement park? It was probably too loud so maybe you couldn't hear me clearly. The moment Shenmengqi heard these words, her face turned pale and she looked at Jiang Yanran in panic. Damn it! She did go to the amusement park with Song Zihang last month and that time, Wanwan had called her for some reason. As she was enjoying Song Zihang's attention, she didn't have the strength to entertain Wanwan so she simply sent her off with a few words and hung up. But how did Wanwan know where I was? Could it be that I accidentally blurted it out? Damn, and this dumb girl had to talk about this in front of Jiang Yanran. Sure enough, Jiang Yanran's expression changed immediately. What did you say? Last month, Shenmengqi and Song Zihang went to the amusement park. Fang Qin was also a little shocked, it was Yanran's birthday that day. Yanran especially invited Song Zihang and was prepared to confess her love to him. In the end, Song Zihang didn't show up and you also said that you couldn't make it since you were sick. Why were you with Song Zihang that day? The girls around them were all stunned as well. Jiang Yanran liked Song Zihang. Not many people knew about this but Shenmengqi was Jiang Yanran's roommate and they were very close, there was no way she didn't know. Since Shenmengqi was clearly aware that Jiang Yanran liked Song Zihang and that she was prepared to confess her love to him on her birthday, why would Shenmengqi lie to Jiang Yanran about feeling sick and going out with Song Zihang? The expression of the onlookers staring at Shin Meng-chi changed in an instant. Going behind a good friend's back to seduce the person she likes, completely shameful. Wanwan heard Fang Qin's words and immediately looked anxious like she had said something wrong, but her eyes were gleaming. Did I say something wrong? Saying those words increased her credibility. As everybody knew that Shin Meng-chi and Wanwan were on very good terms, Jiang Yanran trusted those rumors about Wanwan that Shin Meng-chi said previously. On the contrary, she also believed what Wanwan had just accidentally revealed. Furthermore, Jiang Yanran wasn't a fool. She had her suspicions as well but wasn't completely sure. Sure enough, Jiang Yanran immediately took out her phone with shaky hands and opened the message Song Zihang posted on his moments at the end of last month. Song Zihang had set a mood, "Love of my life, I'll wait for you to graduate." The accompanying picture was a photo taken at the amusement park. There were no real people in the photo but only two elongated shadows of a guy and girl. This obviously meant that Song Zihang had confessed his love for the girl, but the girl had told him that they could only be together after her graduation. After her birthday, Jiang Yanran saw this message and knew that Song Zihang didn't go to her birthday party because he wanted to confess his love to a girl whom he liked for a long time. But she never would have expected that the true love Song Zihang hid from her, the person she really wanted to find out, was someone she actually viewed as her best friend, Shin Meng-chi. No wonder Song Zihang never told me who it was. The person he was protecting so fiercely was actually just by my side. At that moment, Jiang Yanran stared at Shin Meng-chi in disbelief. "Shin Meng-chi, tell me, what's going on here? The person that Song Zihang liked all this time is you?" Chapter 83, You Need Two Hands to Clap. Shin Meng-chi never expected that a thoughtless remark from Wanwan would land her in such big trouble. She wished she could tear her apart on the spot. But since everything was already out in the open, she could only suppress her anger and plead, "Yanran, listen to me, it's not what you think. I had a reason for being with Song Zihang that day. I did it for you." "Oh, so the person who was with him that day was really you? So, you're admitting it? The person that Song Zihang liked all along, is you?" Jiang Yanran started laughing hysterically all of a sudden. Ha! Ha! Shin Meng-chi. I even shared all my feelings with you every day like a fool, shared with you my thoughts on the identity of the girl that Song Zihang liked. Was it entertaining for you to watch me be so stupid? To watch me love him to death while the person he liked was you? Do you feel accomplished? You clearly knew that I had prepared so long to confess my love for him on my birthday and that I was so nervous I couldn't sleep for countless nights. Knowing all that, you still went out with him that day behind my back, and now you dare to say that you were doing it for me? Shin Meng-chi hurriedly replied, "I wanted to make it clear to him." Jiang Yanran sneered and looked at Song Zihang's post on her phone, then she forcefully shoved her phone onto Shin Meng-chi's face. "Make it clear? You made it clear like that?" Shin Meng-chi's nose had been jolted so hard by the phone that tears started flowing. She covered her face and said, "Yanran, let me explain. I told him that I only wanted to focus on my studies and rejected him. But he may have misunderstood what I meant and thought that I wanted to be with him after graduation." Listening to Shin Meng-chi's excuse, Jiang Yanran's face turned gloomier. She said with a face of full rage, "Shut up. Song Zihang told me himself. He said that the girl admitted to having feelings towards him, that you kissed him, yet you're still trying to defend yourself. Get lost. I don't want to hear any more about the both of you. Disgusting." That day, she had gone to find Song Zihang and saw for herself that his eyes were filled with happiness. He told her that the person he liked had accepted his love. If it weren't for Shin Meng-chi giving him hope, why would he have that sort of reaction? Shin Meng-chi didn't expect that Song Zihang would tell Jiang Yanran about this, so her face went pale and she was speechless. Looking at Shin Meng-chi's reaction, the onlookers understood everything. After Jiang Yanran finished talking, she forcibly pushed through the crowd and staggered away. Fang Qin looked at Jiang Yanran hesitantly and then turned to Shin Meng-chi. In the end, she hurriedly chased after Jiang Yanran. The crowd had initially gathered to watch a spectacle involving Wan Wan but unexpectedly bumped into this huge news about two girls fighting over a boy. They all glared at Shin Meng-chi and started whispering. I really couldn't tell that Shin Meng-chi could do something like that. She looks so simple-minded. She knew that Jiang Yanran liked Song Zihang all along but still hooked up with Song Zihang behind her back. She's really cruel. Maybe it was one-sided and Song Zihang was the one chasing her. It takes two hands to clap, okay? Didn't you hear what Jiang Yanran said about the girl voluntarily kissing Song Zihang? That's true. Wanwan stood at the same spot and watched silently at the back of Jiang Yanran staggering off, and she felt a strange sense of kinship as if they suffered from the same disease. This person, Jiang Yanran, drew a clear line between her friends and foes and showed intense feelings for both, as shown by the hatred towards her, and the intense love towards Song Zihang. The Jiang Yanran from her previous life insisted on being with Song Zihang even after she found out he didn't like her. She even begged her parents to pressure him and was finally met with a tragic ending. Would anything change this time after finding about Song Zihang and Shin Meng-chi in advance? What would her choice be? Would she continue to forgive him or would she let go? However, this was no longer something she had the energy to care about. She still needed to figure out how to deal with Ling Dong. Her words just now had tampered down the school rumors and dragged Shin Meng-chi down, but she still had to deal with Si Han. What should I do? Call him and ask if he can help me ward off a suitor. Chapter 84. Treat him as my own brother. While she was thinking, she felt Shin Meng-chi glaring fiercely in her direction. Wanwan raised her brows innocuously and asked leisurely, Meng-chi, I didn't know things would turn out like that. You won't blame me, will you? Shin Meng-chi was so pissed listening to all the nasty whispers around her, but she could only force herself to hold it in and hide the darkness beneath her eyes. She forced a laugh. Wanwan, why would I? Why would I blame you? You didn't do it on purpose. Shin Meng-chi spoke through gritted teeth and her eyes swept across the people who remained. Then, she explained to her urgently, actually, Yan Ran misunderstood me. Why would I steal her sweetheart? Song Zihang did in fact like me and has always been courting me, but I've never responded to him and even went to make things clear with him. He took the chance and kissed me when I wasn't paying attention. I didn't make the first move, I wasn't expecting it at all. I was afraid that Yan Ran would misunderstand, so I kept it from her, but who could have guessed that since Yan Ran was gone and Song Zihang wasn't there, nobody knew the truth. Shin Meng-chi tried to smooth everything over and pushed the blame onto Wanwan instead. Wanwan didn't give the game away either. She responded as if she just had a sudden revelation, that's what I said, the person you like is obviously my brother. Shin Meng-chi was startled by what she said and then corrected her sternly, Wanwan, don't spout nonsense, I've always treated Mu Fan as my own older brother. I liked him only as an older brother. Now that Star Entertainment under the Shin family was thriving, she'd become a big star in future. With a bright future ahead of her, there would be countless boys chasing her. She didn't want to have anything to do with that good-for-nothing loser, Mu Fan. She was holding on to him only because he had some value she could use. What Shin Meng-chi said about treating Mu Fan like her own brother was enough to make Wanwan choke in disgust. As if she didn't know what Shin Meng-chi was truly thinking about. She sneered in her heart and asked suspiciously, really? I personally mailed out the love letter you gave my brother. The letter was very mushy, something like, I fell in love with you when I first saw you, you are the perfect god in my heart, it turns out I was wrong, that's considered liking someone as a brother? And I thought you looked down on my brother because of what happened to my dad. The attentive crowd suddenly let out a sigh, revealing that they understood clearly, and they looked at Shin Meng-chi with even more disgust. With regards to Shin Meng-chi's explanation, they were doubtful of her and most still stood by Jiang Yanran's side. Hearing what Wanwan said now, they suddenly felt that Shin Meng-chi was indeed guilty of despising the poor and seeking favor with the rich. Wanwan's elder brother, Mu Fan, was also a popular figure in Qing he previously, and many people knew about Shin Meng-chi chasing after him. Now she's saying that she views him as a brother. Who would believe her? Shen Mengqi was stunned. Wan Wan, that was so long ago, I was still young and ignorant. I didn't know what love was. Also, how can I possibly distance myself from you and Mu Fan because of what happened to your family? If those were my intentions, why would I be so close to you and even help your brother get into my father's company? Shen Mengqi suddenly gained some confidence. She laughed and said, other than his hobby of gambling, Mu Fan's quite hard-working at work. My dad even complimented him a few days ago. As long as Mu Fan works hard, my dad will never treat him badly. Chapter 85. Took advantage of him. Shen Mengqi acted like she'd blurted out Wan Wan's brother's gambling habits by accident, though her seemingly sincere tone had an obvious superiority to it. Hearing this, the blood in Wan Wan's heart surged, resulting in a taste of iron in her throat. In the past, Shen Hongbin was one of her father's footmen, but now, her proud brother was reduced to being a slave for the Shen family. He thought that he was making a sacrificing for love and worked hard for the Shen family, even helping them produce for a big group of popular artists. Due to the advantages gained from Si Han, the A-list director, Jiang Yanran, and her brother who was known globally as the God of Style consultant, the Shen family's company thrived. Their status even kept up with the Yi family in the entertainment business 7 years in the future. As for Wan Wan's brother, in order to win Shen Mengqi's hand in marriage, he tired himself out and contracted many illnesses at a young age. In the end, his body collapsed. After his value had been squeezed dry, he was kicked out by the Shen family. The Shen family didn't want to be the subject of ridicule, so they got people to frame him of breaking an unspoken entertainment business rule, causing him to lose his reputation, be blacklisted by everybody in the entertainment circle, resulting in great despair to him. She was able to make Jiang Yanran see Shen Mengqi's true self but couldn't get her own brother to regain his senses. In the past, her brother was also very charming himself. He could go through a million pretty girls without being tempted. He had innumerable girlfriends but then fell for Shen Mengqi. He treated Shen Mengqi specially, spoiled her and treated her better than his own sister. With her ruined relationship with her brother now, if she talked bad about Shen Mengqi, not only would he not believe her, it would also worsen their relationship. Until she found someone who could expose Shen Mengqi and allow her brother to thoroughly see the evidence of the Shen family's true colors, then could he be saved. However, it's okay to take it slow. Jiang Yanran was just the beginning. Looking at Shen Mengqi, Wanwan acted surprised and said, "My brother is a top style consultant and has the title of the God of Style in the industry." When Global Entertainment, the rival of Imperial Sky, came to poach him, he didn't even agree to go over. Who knew that some casual words from you could persuade him to switch to your company? Although the Shen family's Polystar Entertainment completely crushed Global Entertainment 7 years in the future and became on par with the Yi family's Imperial Sky, currently the Shen family's company was still lagging far behind these two dominant forces. Once those words had been spoken, the girls around them naturally began to follow the direction of Wanwan's thinking. If Shen Mengqi and Mu Fan really had nothing going on, why would Mu Fan be so submissive to her words, give up the opportunity with the leading Global Entertainment and run over to Polystar? Also, what Wanwan said was obviously hinting that the Shen family took advantage of him while still acting as if they were doing him a favor. Shen Mengqi's face changed slightly. She forced a smile and said, "After all, Mu Fan and I have known each other for ages, so he trusts whatever I say. Even though Polystar isn't as big as Global, it has potential for growth. Mu Fan is very talented, but after you know what happened with your father, it's no longer so easy for him to work with a big company." "Oh, Wanwan, I'll talk to you again soon. I'm worried about Yanran. I'm going to go look for her." Shen Mengqi never expected that Wanwan would be so difficult today. Even after giving her best effort in her verbal match with Wanwan in front of the crowd, she was left with almost no room to refute her. To prevent Wanwan from making an irrefutable counter, Shen Mengqi hurriedly found an excuse and left. Chapter 86. I am no god. Wan Wan watched as Shen Mengqi fled and the corners of her lips curled upwards a little. After what happened today, no matter how Shen Mengqi tried to explain or hide her behavior, everybody would have a changed impression of her and her attitude. According to her understanding of Shen Mengqi, she was probably thirsting for revenge after suffering such a big defeat. Back at her dorm, Wan Wan immediately took out her phone and looked up Si Han's number. She decided to take a risk one more time. To Si Han, lying and running away were the greatest sins, so this was probably tame in comparison. What was there to lose by being honest? At the same time, just as Wan Wan expected, Shen Mengqi was boiling inside. Jiang Yan ran and Fang Qin weren't in the dorm. She looked at her face, which had been smashed by the phone. It was rapidly swelling up. With one furious sweep of her arm, she sent everything on the table crashing to the ground. Damn it, this is all that dumb Wan Wan's fault. That dummy actually dared to bring up my old flame, Yimu Fan. Yimu Fan is only a dog in my family's company now, how can he compare? He's like a toad wanting to be a swan. Wan Wan, I definitely won't let you off so easy. Shen Mengqi pulled out her phone with a gloomy expression. She sneered and quickly drafted a message. Mr. C, Wan Wan's been hanging out with some bad company lately. She's very close to a troublemaker at school. She clearly knows that he has bad intentions. I'm worried that Wan Wan will be foolish and get tricked by him. I really don't understand why she keeps doing things to harm her relationship with you when you're such a good person and treats her so well, Mr. C. Shen Mengqi twisted the truth with just a few words. On the surface, she acted like she cared about Wan Wan's safety, but in reality, she actually didn't care at all. When it came to snitching on people, Shen Mengqi was top-notch. Aside from this message, she didn't forget to send over some photos of the two of them walking together. This allowed her to finally let off some steam. She didn't know what went wrong yesterday. Wan Wan was able to go back to school like usual. But this time, with evidence in place, she would get her for sure. Late at night, Jean Garden, Sui stared at the door that had been shut for an entire day and night. He paced around anxiously. What should I do? Ninth Master has locked himself in the room for 1 day and 1 night already. Dr. Mo, aren't you a top psychologist? Think of something. Mo Xian folded his arms and leaned against the wall opposite. He was astonished. I'm a doctor, not a god. Does he think I'm omnipotent? Anyway, I'm completely useless with Si Han. There's nothing we can do, right? While Sui was freaking out, there was suddenly the sound of an incoming text nearby. Sui followed the direction of the sound and realized it was the phone Si Han threw on the floor. He picked it up to take a look and saw that there were many new message notifications on the screen. They were all from Shen Mengqi. This woman is some lingering ghost. I already have enough to deal with. Sui cursed silently and clutched the phone tightly to prevent Si Han from hearing. Mo Xian looked at the phone and pondered slightly before saying, Go and check what's going on with Wan Wan, maybe she can lure Ninth Master out. Suyi's face turned black after he heard that. Did they have to use such a terrifying method to lure the Ninth Master out? But there was no other way. If Master keeps refusing food and drink, how can his body take it? It looked like they could only fight poison with poison. Chapter 87. The boy chasing after Wan Wan, and so, Sui quickly got someone to check up on Wan Wan. A short while later, the investigation concluded. There was a boy in school who was courting Wan Wan openly and the whole school knew about it. Sui was on the verge of breaking down. Wan Wan was simply a disaster and the consequences were too terrifying. There's someone in school that's openly chasing Ms. Yi. Dr. Mo, should we tell Ninth Master about it? Sui asked with a sullen face. Normally, when Wan Wan spoke to other guys, Ninth Master flared up. But now, there was someone who dared to chase her. How could he continue to let Wan Wan wander about freely? If the two of them fought again. He wanted desperately to hide this from Master. Mo Xian went blank for a while. Are you sure? With the way Wan Wan looks, she's still able to attract a suitor? Sui nodded his head sternly, it's true. Also, it's been said that the guy is Qing He's big shot, he's the son of the school's director. He's quite good looking and popular with the girls. He might just have a problem with his eyesight. Mo Xian pinched the space between his brows and was a bit hesitant. After deep consideration, he said, Ninth Master will find out sooner or later. Sui agreed. It's just a matter of an early or late death. So, Sui took a deep breath, knocked on the tightly shut door and pushed it open carefully. He saw that the curtains were all drawn, with only a narrow gap revealing a weak ray of light that landed on the man's face. Si Han's long body lay on the sofa, one leg bent and one hand covering his eyes to block out the light. The collar of his black shirt that was normally meticulously buttoned to the top now had 2 buttons unfastened, his devilishly handsome face morbidly pale. His presence produced a gloomy aura around him. But with this kind of aura, not only did it not hurt him, it made him look more malicious instead, like a vampire that had been in deep sleep for 1,000 years in an ancient palace. In fact, the master was 100 times more dangerous when silent than when actively enraged. Sui swallowed hard and walked over trembling, 9th. Ninth Master. There are some messages for you. They were sent by Shinmeng Qi. She sent many messages over. It might be an emergency, in the past, as long as it was a message from Shinmeng Qi, Si Han gave it his full attention. But now, Si Han didn't react at all. Sui waited for a long while, so long that his limbs were going numb. So, he could only summon up his courage and tell him the news, Ninth Master. There seems to be a boy in school who's courting Ms. Yi. In the next second, there was a surge of cold air and a fearsome, murderous intent entered the space. Although the man on the sofa didn't move and only kept his eyes open slightly, the atmosphere changed completely. Facing this terror, the petrified Sui was filled with fear in his heart. He grieved in silence for that boy who was blind and tempting death and prepared himself well for whatever came next. While Sui was still extremely nervous, a sudden ringing of the phone shocked him so much that he almost tossed the phone away in fright. He quickly looked at the incoming call display, thinking that it was Shinmeng Qi trying to stir up trouble again, but then he saw clearly that it was actually Wan Wan. Suyi's heart suddenly went to his throat. Why is Wan Wan calling at this hour? 9th. Ninth Master, it's Ms. Yi calling. A video call. Chapter 88, Top-notch suck-up in the room that was as quiet and gloomy as a cemetery, only the ringing of the phone reverberated. Sui couldn't guess what was on Si Han's mind and couldn't figure out whether he wanted to answer this call or not. He stood there, frozen, with the phone raised. He had a sense of foreboding about this call. He hoped Master would ignore it. The atmosphere became more and more unbearable with each ring. The ringing was like a bomb ticking away. Suyi's nerves were frazzled, and probably because he was so flustered, his hand slipped and he accidentally pressed the button to answer. In the next second, Wan Wan's usual grotesque face appeared on the screen. Damn! It's over. At the other end, Wan Wan had waited for a very long time and saw that the phone was just about to automatically end the call. Right at that moment, the screen flashed and the video call was finally connected. The moment she saw the screen, Wan Wan's pupils contracted. She could only see the man on the screen lying on the sofa with one hand over his forehead, his collar with 2 buttons unfastened and hair in a mess. His face was abnormally pale. Even through the screen, she could feel the terrifying and dangerous aura emitting from the man's body. Judging by the angle on the screen, the phone seemed to be held by another person, possibly Sui. The display on the phone was shaking slightly and she guessed it was Suyi's hand trembling. From this slight tremble, Wan Wan was acutely aware of the dire situation and was 80% sure that Si Han had received the news already. She was a moment too late. Wan Wan pressed her lips together and squinted her eyes. Sorry. Did I interrupt your sleep? Su-yi saw that he had answered the call accidentally and could only try to mediate the situation with his head drenched in cold sweat. Ms. Yi, ninth master hasn't gone to bed yet. Why are you calling this late? Is there something wrong? If there is nothing urgent. Wan didn't wait for Su-yi to finish his sentence before nodding vigorously. Yes, I have an urgent issue. Su-yi, oh. Wan quickly said, there was a boy in school who confessed to me and he said he likes me. Su-yi almost vomited blood and his soul quivered. He knew he shouldn't have taken this call. He didn't notice that the phone was swaying back and forth, but he hoped Wan would stop talking. Nonetheless, Wan's mumbles continued through the phone. Could you come with me to meet this boy? Su-yi felt a bolt of lightning striking his head. She actually asked the ninth master to go with her to meet that boy. At this moment on the sofa, Si-han's half-opened eyes were now fully opened, like a wild beast waking up from its slumber. While Su-yi had all his hopes dashed, Wan's voice continued coming through the receiver. I've told the boy that I have a boyfriend already and he didn't believe me. Do I look single? I was so mad that I agreed to bring my boyfriend for him to see on impulse. Not only do I have a boyfriend, my boyfriend's also 1,000 times better looking than our school's hunk. Su-yi stood rooted to the ground, completely dumbstruck as he listened and wondered whether this was some kind of trick. Wanwan's sucking up was pretty darn good. Even the man's dreary expression was stunned for a moment. As Wanwan didn't get a response for a long time, she hung her head low, dejected. Sorry. Did I trouble you? If it's not convenient for you, then, time, the man's low and hoarse voice interrupted her from the other end of the call. Wanwan was astonished for a moment before her eyes glowed. How about tomorrow night? Just outside school. Sure. Chapter 89, Because my boyfriend likes it indeed, telling the truth will get you a lighter sentence. The next morning, Wanwan went to class feeling at ease. Soon after she sat down, a shadow was cast over her head. Ling Dong stood in front of her looking calm. Seeing this, Wanwan shot a suspicious gaze over. Everybody in class looked at the both of them, hungry for gossip. Ling Dong pressed his lips together, looked at Wanwan with a serious face and said, Wanwan, I don't know where you've heard that rumor but I swear, I'm definitely not pursuing you because of a lost bet or tricking you. I'm serious. Please believe me. Oh, all the students around burst into an uproar. Wanwan's face darkened instead. She had painstakingly thought of this idea last night to refute the rumors, but in the end, everything was ruined by this guy. Looking at the boy's hurt face, Wanwan stroked her forehead in silence. The things I told you yesterday were also true, don't you believe me? What did she tell me yesterday? The part where she said that she has a boyfriend? Yeah, right. Ling Dong replied boldly. I'll bring you to meet him tonight. Wanwan replied so softly that only Ling Dong and Si Xia beside her could hear. Ling Dong suddenly realized who the him was and a flicker of amazement crossed his face, but he quickly regained his composure. Sure. Finally, class ended. After dinner, there was no one in the school garden. Wanwan called Ling Dong out and both of them went to a restaurant not far away from school. Ling Dong sat on the sofa opposite her with a look of certainty, as if he had already seen through Wanwan's scheme. She would either give up and say it was all an act, or she would find someone to act as her boyfriend. The latter was more probable unless the guy was blind and couldn't see her ridiculous getup. Either way, he would never give up. Wanwan naturally knew what was on Ling Dong's mind and didn't offer any explanation. She looked at the time on her phone. Si-han should arrive in about 20 minutes. Can I ask you a question? Ling Dong suddenly asked. Wanwan nodded, yes. Ling Dong stared at Wanwan's heavily powdered face and coughed lightly. You're so beautiful. Why do you do this to yourself on purpose? Wanwan took a sip of her juice and blinked. Because my boyfriend likes it. Ling Dong was speechless, like he got choked on dog food. Wanwan, you don't have to pretend anymore. Is it that hard to accept me? Even though I'm not as good looking as Si Xia, I dare say I'm not too shabby too. Anyway, when we're together, I'll never let anybody bully you and you can walk freely in school. Ling Dong's tone was full of confidence. Of course, he had the ability to make all of that happen. Ling Dong's popularity in school was only second to that of Si Xia, otherwise, his affection wouldn't have caused everybody to hate her. Wanwan rested her chin. I only have feelings for my boyfriend. Ling Dong gave a helpless expression, then his eyes slightly glistened. Fine, Wanwan, since you insist that I don't believe you, I'll start believing you now. I'll believe everything you said, believe that you have a boyfriend and believe that your boyfriend treats you as well as you said. But what if your words are proven to be false and you were lying to me this whole time? Wanwan took a big bite of caramel pudding and without thinking, said, if I was lying to you, then I'll agree to be with you. After Ling Dong heard that, his face immediately brightened. Are you serious? Wanwan nodded sincerely, of course I am. Chapter 90, Girlfriend Snatcher. Seconds and minutes passed, and just like that, 20 minutes flew by. However, time was up and Si Han still hadn't arrived. But after the full 20 minutes, Su Yi gave her a call. Hello, Ms. Yi, we're very sorry. Ninth Master is in the middle of something, we'll need you to wait a while longer. Ah. What's the matter? Wanwan asked hastily. Su Yi's tone sounded somewhat odd. He hummed and hawed for a long time before answering, no. No, it's nothing much, you just have to wait a while longer. Oh, all right then, Wanwan was reassured. After she hung up, Wanwan said to Ling Dong, my boyfriend has a sudden matter to attend to so he'll be a bit late. Ling Dong folded his arms across his chest and gave a knowing expression that he had expected her to say this. He casually replied, it doesn't matter, I can wait. Si Han was usually very busy so it was normal for him to be delayed. Wanwan didn't think much of it and continued to wait. Another half hour flew by. Si Han still hadn't arrived. But Su Yi called again and informed her with an embarrassed tone, Ms. Yi, Ninth Master hasn't settled things here, you might have to wait some more. Oh, it's fine, let him finish up his work first. Wanwan replied, not fussing at all. Ling Dong, who was sitting opposite, looked at Wanwan, why? He's been delayed again. Wanwan nodded, so sorry, he's extremely busy. Ling Dong played along, no problem, I don't have anything to do anyway, we can take our time. Just like that, one long hour went by and the restaurant was emptying out. After the hour, Su Yi called for the third time. This time, Su Yi sounded even weirder. He was trembling in fear like he was about to cry. Wanwan wasn't sure what kind of trouble he'd gotten into. I'm truly sorry, Ninth Master is still not done. Oh, Wanwan felt that something was off. Could it be that something serious happened? Or did Si Han actually not want to come? But that couldn't be, if Si Han didn't want to come, he could have rejected her outright. There was no point in him agreeing and then keep getting Su Yi to give her excuses. How about we meet another day? Wanwan suggested. Su Yi panicked immediately, no. Please. I'm really sorry Ms. Yi. Ninth Master can't leave at the moment, but he'll be there tonight no matter what. Please wait a little longer, please. All right then. After Su Yi's pleading, Wanwan could only agree but she was very curious. What exactly was happening over at Si Han's house? After Wanwan hung up the phone for the third time, Ling Dong looked at the time, stared at her and said, Wanwan, if this so-called boyfriend you mentioned doesn't show up by 12 a.m. tonight, can it be considered that you were lying to me? Wanwan thought about Su Yi promising that Si Han would show up tonight no matter what and nodded in the end, yes. Ling Dong's face lit up after hearing this and relaxed. Now, he eagerly watched the time pass, bit by bit. There was only about an hour left till 12 a.m. Just an hour more and this girl would become his girlfriend. Chapter 91, Put Her Down. It was almost closing time for the restaurant and they were the only ones left. Lately, Wanwan's sleep schedule was pretty regular and she'd normally be fast asleep at this time, so she felt quite sleepy. When no one appeared after waiting some more, Wanwan's eyelids became heavier and heavier. She leaned on her chin at first, then she started lying on the table and subsequently, fell asleep. Ling Dong kept an intense watch over the time initially, but when he raised his gaze, he realized that Wanwan was sleeping soundly. He stared at the way the girl slept and the fleeting glimpse from that night appeared in his head. His ears started burning bright red. She'd said plainly that if she was lying to him, then she'd be his girlfriend. Did she agree because she actually liked him? Ling Dong glanced at the time again and became quite excited. Passionately, he reached out to the girl's face, Wan Wan. At this moment, there was a smash and the restaurant's glass door was forced open by a slender and fair hand, accompanied by a gust of night wind. So sorry, our restaurant is closed. That was the voice of the restaurant owner, dissipating into the night wind. The sound of footsteps came closer and closer. Ling Dong felt an inexplicable chill on his back and looked at the door subconsciously. In the next second, his pupils constricted. In his line of sight was a man walking towards him slowly. The man was in a vintage classic black suit. His glacial eyes looked as if they were capable of freezing his soul. As he walked over step by step, it seemed like he didn't resemble a person at all. He looked like a demon king who traveled with the night wind and used the light of the moon to reach the earth. The spacious restaurant suddenly appeared narrow and cramped. Looking at the man's refined disposition and devilishly good looks, Wanwan's words appeared in Ling Dong's head. 1,000 times better looking than Si Xia. There was actually a person like that in this world, and this was him. Just as Ling Dong regained his senses and realized he was gaping at the man was suddenly standing right in front of him. You. Can I help you with anything? Ling Dong asked subconsciously. The man didn't reply and looked coldly at him. Ling Dong felt like he was his prey, being devoured at his throat. As Ling Dong's body stiffened up, a cold sweat covered his forehead. Wanwan, who was totally unconscious and in deep sleep, started falling off the side. Seeing that Wanwan was about to fall, Ling Dong started to reach out for her. The man standing opposite used a relaxed, subtle and wickedly fast tilt of his body and caught the girl instead, who landed right into his arms. Ling Dong looked at the man holding on to Wanwan, hugging her, and his gaze tightened. Wanwan woke up in a shock, rubbed her eyes in a daze and looked at the person in front of her. She blanked out for a while. Then, slowly, she rubbed the man's body and grumbled, "What took you so long?" The man looked at the girl in his arms, his cold gaze completely contrasted with his warm expression. Ling Dong looked at Wanwan and then at this man. What's going on? While Ling Dong stared blankly, the man started hoisting Wanwan up. Ling Dong finally regained his senses and blurted out, "Wait, put her down." "Who are you?" In the next moment, the chilly atmosphere around them intensified. The man looked at the girl in his arms and while Ling Dong continued staring at him in shock, he slowly lowered his head and kissed the girl on her outrageously colored lips. Chapter 92, The Master's Secret Crash. The shattering sound of glass resounded. The cup in Ling Dong's hand crashed onto the floor. It was as if he was struck by lightning as he stared at the two people opposite, flabbergasted. You are. If he and Wanwan together were a contrasting and unexpected pair, then the image of this person kissing Wanwan was really something straight out of a sci-fi movie. It was simply too shocking. "You're Wanwan's boyfriend." Ling Dong took a long time to find his voice. Even he could never kiss Wanwan with that makeup, much less Si Xia, who was finding all kinds of excuses to get out of it, but this man actually. He thought about what Wanwan said before, that she dolled up like that because her boyfriend liked her this way. What Wanwan said was true. The man's indifferent eyes barely looked at Ling Dong before he carried the girl and left the empty restaurant. From beginning till the end, Wan Wan obediently remained locked in the man's embrace. Perhaps she was feeling a little sluggish since she just woke up, or maybe Han's normally scary aura was absent. But being so close to Han wasn't as repulsive as she'd imagined. Between each breath, she could smell a light aroma of fruit trees. It was different from the usual cold vibe from Han, but it smelled pretty good. It might have been her illusion, but this man was clearly still in the same old black outfit tonight, yet it gave her a very grand and formal vibe. He never wore cologne, but he did today. His subtle, luxurious, antique black cufflinks, his metallic tie clip and his suit's design looked similar to his other suits, but after looking closely at the design, it appeared to be brand new. The scariest thing was that this guy was too handsome tonight. She was blinded by Han, even though she was so used to seeing that face of his. Recalling Ling Dong's face now, she couldn't help but find it hilarious. This poor child's 3 values would probably be shattered into pieces tonight. Su-yi stood by the restaurant door and saw everything that happened inside, and he saw that the boy was still standing there in a daze. Su-yi wiped his sweat and couldn't help but criticize his master silently. "Master, must you go that far?" At this moment, Wanwan had the same thought as well. Using Han to fight a suitor of Ling Dong's rank was no different from using an ultimate boss to kill a beginner. Please. Put me down," said Wanwan, after seeing that Han was still carrying her, seemingly without the intention of putting her down. The man paused and the atmosphere became chilly in an instant. A moment later, he let her down. Wanwan jumped onto the ground, lifted her little head to look at the man in front of her, and said eagerly, "Can you carry me on your back?" The man looked surprised after he heard that and immediately bent forward in front of her slowly. Wanwan immediately climbed up onto the man's back, hugged his neck with both hands and yawned lazily. "This feels much better." Sui watched how the both of them interacted and his heart was like a roller coaster, going up and down. He suddenly realized that whenever Wanwan initiated intimacy, his violent and terrifying master became unbelievably docile. On the silent and empty road, the man carried the girl as he walked back to school slowly. Feeling her little head nodding on his back, the man asked, "Tired?" Wanwan nuzzled her head on his shoulders and nodded, "Yeah." "Did something urgent happen to you today? Was it important?" "It's fine." Wanwan wasn't fully convinced, really. But on the phone just now, housekeeper Su sounded like he was about to cry. She shot a suspicious look over to Su-yi as she spoke. Su-yi's back stiffened and quickly waved his hands. "Oh, Ms. Yi, it's really nothing, it has all been settled." Even if you beat him to death, he would never dare to reveal that his elegant and aloof master went through outfit changes for 3 hours, tortured over 10 stylists and made every servant in the house cry, before leaving the house. Chapter 93, My handsome boyfriend. Hearing what Su-yi said, Wanwan didn't probe any further but grumbled, "Luckily you arrived in time. Otherwise, I would have become someone else's girlfriend. Ling Dong and I made a bet, if he found out everything was a lie and my boyfriend didn't show up, I would agree to be his girlfriend." The chill beneath Han's eyes had yet to spread before the girl continued in her victorious and chirpy voice, "Since you promised you'd come, I knew you'd definitely appear, so I made a bet with him without thinking too much about it. Going by Ling Dong's reaction just now, he'll definitely give up this time. After all, my boyfriend is so handsome. You'd beat him in a beauty contest in a second even if you wore a sack." Listening to the girl gloating, the iciness beneath Han's eyes immediately melted. It was obvious that Wanwan sucking up did the trick. Su-yi's face was covered with tears as he listened. "Even if he wore a sack? My lady, if you said so earlier, then people like us wouldn't have to go through such torture tonight." He finally understood that 10,000 compliments from all of them couldn't compare to a single compliment of handsome from this girl. The restaurant wasn't far from school and they arrived at their destination shortly after. Wanwan jumped off the man's back. "I'm here." The man turned and looked at the girl in front of him, his expression becoming cold again. Wan Wan felt that his mood was really like the weather in March, overcast and unpredictable. At the same time, in a little flower bed not far from where Wan Wan and Han were, stood two students, a boy and a girl. The girl looked sweet and cute, dressed in a short pink skirt and had a delicately wrapped paper box in her hand. She stood timidly in front of the boy. Xia. I like you. I made these chocolates myself. I hope you like them. The boy standing opposite was dressed in oversized pajamas like he had come from his dorm just before bed. But this didn't seem to ruin his charm at all, but instead, it made him look even more casual and informal than usual, making the girl's heart flutter. At that moment, the boy whose face could charm all the girls looked disinterested and unconcerned, with a flash of impatience and annoyance. I don't have a sweet tooth. The girl's face turned pale. She acted like she didn't mind and spoke pleadingly, right. Then I'll make something else next time, and I don't like you. After the boy was done talking, he turned and left immediately without a care for the girl. Just as he was walking towards the dorm, the boy suddenly heard a familiar voice in the quiet air, I'm here. Xia paused and turned towards the direction of that voice subconsciously. Wan Wan. The boy furrowed his brows and hid in the shadows. He looked through the gaps between the branches and saw that under the nearby streetlights, Wan Wan was standing there talking to a man. The man had his back to him and he could only see a faint figure, but with just one look, Xia's face changed. Han. How could it be? Xia's face was filled with fear and uncertainty. He continued watching and saw that Wan Wan went up on her tiptoes and lightly kissed the man on his cheek. Good night. She then left while turning and waving to the man. At that moment, the slender and cold figure turned and the man stretched his arms out to grab the girl who hadn't managed to go far. He brought her into his embrace with one move, bent his body and gave one last, passionate kiss. As Xia looked at the man's face, he was dumbstruck and stood rooted to the ground. Chapter 94, Wan Wan and Han. When he saw his egotistical and cold ninth uncle bending over to kiss Wan Wan's nightmarish face, Xia trembled and an explosion resounded in his head. What's going on here? Wan Wan and Han. These two were from completely different planets, different spaces and different levels, but at this moment, they actually appeared together. Not to mention in this kind of terrible relationship. Could it be that the boyfriend Wan Wan keeps talking about is? Xia steadied himself and looked under the streetlights again. He could only see that the man was turning away while Wan Wan walked in the direction of the girls' dormitory. Xia stared at Wan Wan's back and stood in the dark for a long time. Then his phone rang with a text message. He peeked at his phone and walked towards the boys' dormitory. Just as he reached the first level of the dormitory, he saw Shui standing there. Although it was already very late, Shui was still dressed neatly. She wore a beautiful dress without a single wrinkle. If you looked closely enough, you could see that she also had on exquisite, yet natural makeup. Why have you been outside? Shui looked in the direction that Xia appeared from, as darkness flashed beneath her eyes. It seemed like the news was right. Some shameless girl was trying to seduce him in the middle of the night. Is anything the matter? Xia's tone was much more pleasant when he spoke to Shui than when he spoke to that other girl earlier. Can't I just drop by? Lately, you've always been busy with that ugly freak Wan Wan, and there are always girls harassing you during the day. I don't have any chances to talk to you. Shui was unhappy and grumbled with a bit of playfulness. If nothing's the matter then we'll talk tomorrow, I have something to do now. Xia spoke as he entered the dormitory staircase. Shui was flustered by that. It's so late already, what do you have to do? Was that Han Xiaoru with you just now? Yeah, Xia didn't deny it. Shui clenched her fist tightly. What did she want? Xia, to give me chocolates. Han Xiaoru, that girl. Qing Shui gritted her teeth right after hearing that, but seeing that Si Xia was empty-handed, it was obvious that he didn't accept them, and then she was happy once more. The girls in this school are so annoying to harass you every day. She actually gave you chocolates, but doesn't she know that you're allergic to cocoa powder? She then took out a bag and gave it to him. This is your favorite almond cake, you can have it for breakfast tomorrow. Thanks, Si Xia accepted the gift. Seeing that Si Xia accepted her cake, Qing Shui's gloomy mood immediately disappeared. She stared at that dazzling face and said shyly, "You don't have to be so polite with me. I can make it for you next time if you like it." Auntie C said that my baking skills are getting better. I knew that he sees me differently from all those other girls. TSK, I can't believe all these wildflowers and weeds in school are actually trying to snatch my man. I won't keep you then, have an early night after you're done with your work. Knowing that he no longer had any business with Han Xiaoru, Qing Shui was relieved. With her crazily pounding heart, she ran off excitedly. However, the girl didn't know that once she left, the polite, courteous expression of the boy immediately disappeared, revealing an indifferent expression that completely contrasted with the usual perfect image he had in front of her. It even had a hint of disgust and contempt. The boy walked a few steps ahead leisurely and casually threw the delicately wrapped cake into the garbage can next to him. After he entered, the boy didn't go to his own dorm. Instead, he went upstairs to see Ling Dong. Chapter 95, So handsome he could turn me gay. Who is it? A boy in his undershirt and oversized boxers pulled open the door with a sleepy face. After he saw that the person at the door was Si Xia, he was stunned for a moment. Oh, Si Xia. Even though it was very common in the boys' dormitory for guys to drop by, standing in front of him was the dream boy of every girl in school and the common enemy of every boy. Furthermore, like the school's goddess, Qing Shui, he was clearly not from a simple family, he was from a completely different world from nobodies like them. Besides, Si Xia always kept to himself, he didn't usually hang out with them, not to mention dropping by in the middle of the night. So seeing him here at this late hour, the boy was inevitably surprised. Do you need something? I'm looking for Ling Dong, Si Xia replied. Oh, you're looking for Dong Ji, Wan. He just came back, it's just that. The boy scratched his head, looking rather vexed. You're here at a bad time, Dong Ji isn't really in a good state right now, not in a good state. Come in, you'll understand once you see it for yourself. The boy sighed and opened the door. Just as Si Xia stepped inside, a pungent smell of alcohol overwhelmed him. After Si Xia entered, the boy quickly closed the door, afraid that the smell of alcohol would escape and expose them to the dorm inspector. He saw that Ling Dong was sitting on the floor like a puddle of mud, seemingly completely drunk beyond his senses and mumbling Wanwan's name. Wanwan. Wanwan. Why do you treat me like that? Why didn't I find out sooner? With just one look at his condition, anyone with a discerning eye would know immediately that he was heartbroken. What happened? Si Xia glanced at the three boys in the dorm. The three boys looked at one another. The boy who just opened the door stepped closer and said mysteriously, Dong Ji went to meet Yi Wanwan's boyfriend this evening. Yi Wanwan actually has a boyfriend. Can you believe it? Really? Si Xia's eyes glistened slightly. That's right. At first, we all thought that Yi Wanwan was lying about having a boyfriend in order to turn Dong Ji off. She even said that her boyfriend was extremely good-looking, bragging non-stop. Who would believe her? But, who could have guessed that when Dong Ji went, he actually got to meet the guy? More than just meet, according to Dong Ji, that man was so handsome he could shatter the skies, and compared to you, Si Xia, he was, the boy sighed and stopped. Oh, better looking than me, right? Si Xia spoke softly. The boy rubbed his nose and answered awkwardly, anyway, that was what Dong Ji said. We all suspected that he's drunk. Otherwise, how could he have said such nonsense? How could there be any good-looking and blind man in this world that would fall in love with Yi Wanwan? Exactly, So what if Wanwan has a boyfriend? Dong Ji still has a chance to win her over, right? While the boys were conversing, Ling Dong, who was drunk in the corner, waved his beer bottle and shouted in anger, "Damn it! Handsome! So handsome he could turn me gay. As if I could fight him." The three boys on the side, "What the hell do you mean that he was so handsome he could turn you gay?" "Dong Ji, calm down a little, Dong Ji." Si Xia glanced at Ling Dong and after a few moments, he walked over to him and squatted down. Then, he passed his phone to him. "Was it him you saw this evening?" Ling Dong looked at Si Xia's phone in a daze. In the next second, his drunkard expression suddenly sobered up and he sat up quivering suddenly. "You? Why would you have a picture of Yi Wanwan's boyfriend?" Hearing that, Si Xia closed both his eyes immediately and beneath his eyes was a significant darkness. Si Han. It was really him. That woman in Jean Garden actually was Yi Wanwan, his classmate from the same school and class, right under his nose. Chapter 96, I Can Teach You. As Si Xia took his seat, the girls jabbered away. Zhao Xingzhou's face suddenly became stern and said, all right, calm down everybody. Why aren't you guys so excited to see me?" "Teacher, you're not handsome," some girls retorted immediately. "Hey, what did you just say? Please repeat yourself, loud and clear." There was an obvious threat in Zhao Xingzhou's voice. "Teacher, you're the most handsome," the girls shouted in fear. "Very good. Continue with the questions then." After messing around for a while, everybody continued with the questions, but it was very obvious that all the bewitched girls were not fully focused on their studies anymore. After Si Xia sat down, he glanced through the practice questions once and did not bother with them any further. He laid his head down and started sleeping as usual. Yi Wanwan was filled with jealousy. Far from handing in blank exam papers like her, this chap knew how to do every question. Compared to how she had to memorize sample answers and scoring well out of sheer luck on her last test, Si Xia always got perfect marks for math, aside from the times when he purposely skipped exams. In her eyes, this kind of person was a total anomaly. Certainly, there must be no normal human in the Si family. Yi Wanwan was bitterly doing her work while cursing under her breath when she suddenly felt a weight on her shoulder and fresh clean scent wafted into her nose. Yi Wanwan turned her head stiffly to look and realized that Si Xia had slumped over in his sleep and was now leaning on her shoulder. At that moment, there was an uproar in class. The girls who had fixed their attention on Si Xia this whole time dropped their jaws. Cheng Shui's glare was murderous. Damn. Si Xia actually leaned against her shoulder. "Yi Wanwan, this slut. Nobody stop me, I'm going to break that ugly freak's claws." As Yi Wanwan faced the murderous stares from all the girls in the class, she hurriedly tried to reposition the sleeping beauty on her shoulder carefully. "Oh my God, save me. How is this my fault? I'm a victim too, right?" But if she really said those words out loud, she might be beaten to death, so she could only swallow her words down. Thankfully, when she was halfway through moving him, Si Xia awoke. That sleepy face and lazy eyes are simply too dreamy. After looking at Si Han's face for so many years, she thought she was already immune to his beauty, yet she was still electrified by just a glance. Although Si Xia really couldn't compare to Si Han, they were entirely different species. Si Han was dangerous and mysterious, egotistical and arrogant, while at the moment, Si Xia was the kind of king who could charm thousands of girls. After Si Xia woke up, he rubbed his forehead lazily and glanced at Yi Wanwan's question booklet. This question, Yi Wanwan looked over, surprised. "What? You got this question wrong, and this is wrong too." Watching Si Xia picking out numerous questions, Yi Wanwan's brows twitched and she took a deep breath. "Just tell me which questions I got right." Si Xia's fair and slender fingers pointed at two of the questions. "You got two multiple-choice questions right." These two questions were wild guesses. Yi Wanwan was so sad that she wanted to bang her head on the desk. I thought my math wasn't that bad. I can teach you, Si Xia smiled. Chapter 97, Do You Miss Me? Hearing that, Wanwan shuddered as she finally realized what was different about Si Xia today. Usually, he would be lying on the desk asleep and wouldn't even look at her the whole day. But today, he actually took the initiative to talk with her, and even offered to teach her math. Cough, no thanks, I don't want to die a humiliating death. By the way, where did you go today? Why'd you only come to last period? All the girls were going crazy from missing you. Most importantly, everyone blamed me for his absence. Wanwan thought out loud, if Si Xia really didn't come because of me, then I should just ask the teacher to change seats. I can't change my role in the play, but at the very least I want to try to change seats, really? Si Xia asked softly. Yes. Wanwan nodded, then took the opportunity to ask, you didn't come today, was it because, then, before Wanwan could finish, Si Xia interrupted her and asked, what about you? Huh? What about me? Wanwan didn't understand what Si Xia was trying to get at. Si Xia looked at her shyly and said, did you miss me? Wanwan was completely dumbfounded, damn. What game is he trying to play? Wanwan's body was covered in goosebumps and as she stared back in shock, her whole face in terror, she asked, Do you have a fever? All right, everybody please stop. I'm going to take up the questions now. If you had any trouble with the questions, listen up and pay attention. Zhao Xingzhou's words cut through the strange atmosphere. Wanwan clutched her chest, her whole face frightened and uncertain while still thinking about those words that scared her half to death. Is this guy just teasing me? By the end of the class, the girls were glaring at her so hard she thought they would burn a hole in her body. Although they couldn't hear what Si Xia and she were talking about, they were fully aware that today Si Xia not only leaned on her shoulder but he even spoke to her for the first time. No matter the topic, it was enough to make people want to beat up and drown Wanwan. All the girls in school had a consensus that Si Xia belonged to all of them and nobody was allowed to fight for him. If this unspoken rule was broken, the offender would become a public enemy. Even if a girl wanted to break the rule, she would only dare to confess her love to Si Xia secretly, lest she faces the wrath of the others. If she was found out, she wouldn't be able to come to school anymore. On the surface, it looked like Wanwan had actually dared to seduce Si Xia in front of everyone and thus attracted quite a lot of hatred. Of course, the reality was that Si Xia had leaned against her accidentally and it was also Si Xia who initiated the conversation, but nobody cared about these facts. The person who was in the wrong was obviously Wanwan. Wanwan initially thought that this would all be over after school. Who knew that Si Xia, who had missed rehearsals consecutively for so many days, would actually show up today? At rehearsal, Wanwan rehearsed distractedly with her brows furrowed. She began to have a strange ominous premonition. Si Xia sat against the window and as usual, he was surrounded by a group of girls making a big fuss over him. Si Xia, that ugly freak is getting more and more out of hand, she even harassed you in class. Don't worry Si Xia, we've already submitted a petition demanding to switch Wanwan out. Miss Liang will definitely meet our demands. Actually, you didn't have to come today, Miss Liang will announce her decision tomorrow. That's right, why don't you go back and have a good rest? You must be nauseous after that math class. While the girls bombarded Si Xia, the other students preceding him had finished rehearsing and it was now his turn. The class monitor walked up to Si Xia and asked weakly, Si Xia, it's your turn, do you want to rehearse today? With everyone's attention, Si Xia slowly stood up from his seat and glanced at the stage, of course. Chapter 98, A Kiss from the Hunky. Wanwan had initially thought that Si Xia wasn't coming to rehearsal today so she had applied purple lipstick. Seeing Si Xia walking over, she asked subconsciously, do you want me to change the color? She remembered how Si Xia couldn't stand this color. Si Xia glanced at her and an unusual warmth flashed across his eyes. No need, it's nice. Yi Wanwan. What? Nice? Could someone save me from this guy? Yi Wanwan was so shaken up that she started to touch up her makeup to calm her nerves, but her eyeliner came out crooked as her hands shook and she even smudged her lipstick. Si Xia glanced at Yi Wanwan's face and a fleeting smile appeared on his gentle face, but in the next moment he took a deep breath and said, "Let's start rehearsing." Since Si Xia himself wanted to rehearse, the flock of girls surrounding him were powerless to do anything and could only sit and watch unwillingly. The rehearsal of the final act, Meet the Prince, began. After Snow White was poisoned, a prince rode his white horse through the forest, lost his way and found a little wooden house by some strange coincidence. There, he saw 7 little dwarves mourning for Princess Snow White. Si Xia slowly walked towards the table where Yi Wanwan lay and gazed at the girl's face with his glass-like eyes filled with deep emotion and sadness. All the people watching were full of admiration. Wow! The hunk's acting skills today are off the charts. Yi Wanwan's role in this scene of the play tested everybody to the max. The girls had to imagine this ugly freak as the world's most beautiful Princess Snow White. After this, the most disturbing scene was about to begin, the prince giving a kiss of true love to wake up the sleeping Snow White. Si Xia stroked the girl's hair lightly. With one arm propped beside her, he then slowly bent his body down. His motions made all the girls blush. With hearts pounding, they each wanted to rush up on stage to lay down in Yi Wanwan's place. Oh, I'm so mad. I really want to be kissed by the hunk as well. The hunk's too nice and gentle, yet he still forced himself to rehearse this scene. But someone is taking advantage of his gentleness. Shame on her. Everybody gritted their teeth. With aching hearts, they collectively prepared a bottle of mineral water and garbage bin for Si Xia. Meanwhile, as Si Xia stroked the girl's hair lightly, he accidentally brushed her neck and his fingers suddenly stiffened up. Yi Wanwan's skin was as fair as goat's milk. One word immediately surfaced in his mind when he touched it, delicate. Si Xia was a little taken aback and retracted his fingers quickly like he had just gotten burnt while the ends of his ears started reddening. He immediately calmed himself down, bent down again and edged closer to the girl bit by bit. Qing Shui, who was watching, suddenly stood up and shouted, "What is going on?" All the other girls were stunned as well. Why didn't Si Xia run away as usual when he got this close? This time, he's actually leaning closer and closer. Everybody watched as the distance between the two of them shrank. Even if they were just getting in position, they didn't have to be that close. Damn! What is going on? Could it be that Si Xia really wants to do it for real? Even the distracted Ling Dong, who was watching from the corner of the room, suddenly changed his expression when he realized what was happening. Although Yi Wanwan had closed her eyes, she could feel Si Xia's breath. When she felt that something wasn't quite right, she quickly opened her eyes. In the next second, Si Xia's face loomed directly in front of her. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.